Hi, this is Jason Nazar, and I am incredibly honored and happy today to have Cynthia Cynt Marshall with us as our guest on our If I Knew Then series. And for those of you joining us for the first time, I'm a serial entrepreneur based out of Southern California, and I've just been so fascinated with knowing the stories of incredible people like Cynt and their journey. I've started and sold a couple different companies. Currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Comparably, which is an online platform for employee reviews and to help companies with their employer brand and company culture. And we're doing this series to have incredible guests like Cynt come on and tell her story of the lessons that she's learned over her career and all the amazing things that she has to impart to so many of us that are trying to figure out how to keep better of ourselves. So Cynt, it is an absolute pleasure to get to spend this time with you. You are an amazing source of energy from even the little bit of time we got to spend so far. Thank you so much. And for those folks out there that, may not know that much about your background, please fill them in on this, incredible journey you've had so far.
Okay, well, first of all, it is so great to be here and great to hang out with you. And you're right, we were hanging out a few minutes ago, and so I'm already feeling the energy and excited to be here. Let's see, I know we're going to go way back to the beginning, I think, when you start asking questions, but I'll just pick it up with my professional career. I started almost 39 years ago with AT&T, so fresh out of college, and grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so in the East Bay, went to college at Berkeley, and ended up with 13 job offers and started working for, it was Pacific Bell at the time. So started working for AT&T and had 14 different jobs in, technical, non-technical, staff, line, you name it. Was in the San Francisco Bay Area for 25 years until we bought Bell South and Singular. And I got a call while at a basketball game. The team will remain nameless, but I was in the Bay Area. And got a call one night saying that we had just bought Bell South and Singular, and they asked me to move to North Carolina. So my husband and the kids, we all packed up and moved, and just had a great opportunity there to run the North Carolina operation. Did that for 6.5 years, and I'm sure we'll talk about all the fun that we had in North Carolina, along with some health scares as well. And then came to Dallas in 2013 and put in another, about 4 years, and just did something totally different from what I had done in the past. Ended up being the Senior Vice President of Human Resources, and also halfway through that stint, the Chief Diversity Officer job was added to that. So did a lot of work around culture transformation, inclusion and diversity, and I know we'll talk about that. And then retired after 36 years, started my own consulting company, focused on leadership development and just how to optimize people resources. And then I got a call 10 months into that from someone that I know you know, Jason, Mark Cuban, asking me if I could come and help him really lead the Dallas Mavericks organization on the business side. And so it has been an amazing journey that I know we will dig into. So I am happy to be here, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I have 4 children, 4 adopted children, so we can talk about that. And I've been married 37 years. So I'm one of those people who believe you can have it all. You just can't have it all in the same day, and sometimes not the same week. But as a woman executive, I have figured out I'm blessed. I have a great support system around me, and we're trying to get a lot of good things done at work, but also in our communities.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole lot that I'm excited to dive into. I think to begin with, I'm a massive basketball and NBA fan. I think, anyone who follows the NBA kind of thinks of the Mavericks as a world-class organization. The players always talk about, what kind of incredible leadership and ownership has come out of the Mavs. Obviously, they were going through some trouble 2 years ago, which you were a big part of turning around. But just to start, what does a CEO of an NBA team do day to day? What's your responsibility? What are your metrics? What are you being, what's your yardstick for success?
So what I do day to day, there are 3 things just as a leader that I do day to day, that I have done day to day for a number of years. I listen to people, I learn from people, I love them, and then I lead them. So I do that no matter where I go. And so in terms of overall responsibilities, we are responsible for everything that's not coaching and not scouting. So that's all in the basketball ops. We run the business of basketball. So ticket sales and service, corporate sponsorships, corporate communications, the marketing aspect of it, social media, player relations in terms of supporting their activities when they're not on the court, all the philanthropic activities, the analytics that go with just running a business, making sure we are making money and not losing money during the season, and putting the business plan together for running the business of basketball. So it's everything except coaching and playing, and of course, scouting, all the business aspects of it. Things I knew nothing about until 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people may not realize how large a P&L in a business, a professional sports team is. I mean, you're talking about billions of dollars of revenue. Obviously, it's super interesting right now. We're going to go into this bubble in, Florida playing where there aren't going to be fans in the stadium. I got to think that your background as a non-traditional NBA executive may actually behoove you and give you a leg up versus a lot of folks that are thinking like, hey, what do we do at a time like this where we can't make revenue in ways as we did before? How are you thinking about how to approach the challenge of COVID in the NBA season right now?
Now, you just met me, but you have already pegged me, okay? Because I keep telling everybody this is such a good time for us to just step out of anything we've done in the past, anything that's been traditional in basketball, because it's a whole new game right now. And this is the time, and in fact, we're going to have a session coming up next week where we can just figure out how to increase viewership, how to make the viewing experience something very different, how to make the in-game entertainment experience different for people, because we are forced to do it differently now. So we need all the creative and innovative minds at the table to figure out what the future of basketball looks like in terms of actually watching it and experiencing it. So it is an exciting time for us. I mean, obviously, there are implications to not having fans in the building and all that. But our number one goal this year in our business plan was to increase viewership. And so now that actually is getting ready to happen in a strange sort of way. So we're actually pretty excited about the opportunities that are out there. We're going to take advantage of some of this technology and some of the great resources that are out there that normally we wouldn't stop to pay attention to. Secondly, when COVID first broke out, we were focused. We already had a business continuity plan. So that's something that you just always have as a business. When I worked for AT&T, a few years, I actually led our business continuity plan process years ago. So you always have a plan and you just plug in whatever the crisis is. So this time the crisis was COVID. And so we had our business continuity plan. We had the things that we had to check off. Number one was, sending our people home safely with the resources they needed, making sure that they knew they were going to get paid because it was important to my boss, Mark Cuban, important to me that people not suffer a financial crisis on top of a health crisis. So, a global pandemic. So we wanted to make sure that that was taken care of and they knew it. And then we had to just think about, okay, what are we going to do now? The community needs us. How can we step up and be an even better community partner than normal? And at the Mavs Foundation, I mean, people know the Mavs Foundation is always there. They know we are big community players, but we needed to step up in a bigger way. So our leadership team got together and said, okay, we're not playing the business of basketball right now. And we don't know how long we won't be playing the business of basketball, but we're playing the game of life with people right now. And so what are the needs of our people, our employees, but what are also the needs of others that we can help to meet? And so we just put a plan together. We identified organizations that we thought would really need us. And this is a good example of how when you have a diverse group of people around the table, there's just a diverse thought process and diverse thinking. So we came up with a variety of organizations that needed our help. In particular for me, because of my background, I thought about all the kids who all of a sudden they were going to be forced to learn virtually, but maybe not have the technology and the resources that they needed. So how do we help with that? I thought about kids or people in general who are all of a sudden at home, and home is not always a safe place. I know when I grew up, our home was not always a safe place. So how do we make sure to support those folks who, normally the eyes would be on it and you can identify if domestic violence or child abuse is going on, how we're going to help that. Of course, food pantry, Sears and all that. PPE, we ended up literally in the personal protection equipment business. And so we just had to shift. It was all about other people. So that's what we've been doing. That's it. We've just been responding. But now we are playing basketball again, which is awesome.
We'll get to basketball at the end. I'm going to be rooting for y'all unless you come up against our hometown Lakers here. So we'll get to that in a bit.
Well, let's go Mavs. I love my Mavs. You know, I'm a California girl, okay? But I had to take all my California stuff and put it in the box because I'm about my Mavs now.
So when you came in at the helm 2 years ago, you know, it was pretty public that the organization was having some challenges, and you know, you put in this plan, a 100-day plan. You know, what I'm really kind of curious to know is what are the specific things that you did in that time that kind of turned around the culture of the company, and what can other company leaders that feel like, hey, I want to actually make some actionable change in my organization, how can they replicate what you were able to do?
Okay, the first thing I did, and I'll say, you know, I did and we did, at the end of the day, it was a group of people who helped to transform the Dallas Mavericks. And that's something I always like to stress is, yes, I was the one that Mark Cuban called, but I did not do this by myself. Yes, it takes leadership. It takes bold leadership to make the kind of transformation that we made, but I did not do it by myself. And even right now, I'm so blessed to be surrounded by a great group of people. They are just absolutely amazing. And every day still, they are teaching me the business of basketball. So we're having a good time. But the first thing I did was lay out a vision. When Mark called and I ended up, you know, accepting the position and all that. And at first I didn't know if I was going to until, you know, I talked to him. It was a very sincere, wonderful conversation. Then I talked to some women and they were telling me some of their stories. Went home, prayed about it, and decided to come back the next morning. And I was in the building for 3 hours and Mark didn't even know I was there because people had me in a conference room and they were just filing in and out, telling me their stories. And I'm very much a people person. So I was like feeling this. Yeah. And so I just knew at that time, okay, yes, I'm going to do this.
Looking at it from the outside, when you spent that, you know, period of time before you joined and maybe in the first week or two, from your perspective, you know, what did you feel like was off course? I know people talked about it publicly, but I'd like to know from your perspective, like what did you assess was not going in the right direction?
I felt like truly the culture was off. There was not a culture of really taking care of people. There was definitely not a culture of inclusion. So there were just, you know, very few people who were kind of deemed important. There was definitely not a culture that says people come first. There was not a recognition that if you have a diverse group of people at the table, your business does better. I mean, it's proven that there's a business case for diversity. That was absent. Diversity was definitely absent. And then there weren't the right kind of what I call just the normal operational effectiveness, just the normal things you do, robust performance management, robust talent management, looking at equity in terms of pay equity and how decisions are made. What I really felt overall is that there were you know, no values. Just the values were missing. And that's actually where I started with vision and values. I started by laying out a vision, and I said it in our first press conference before, you know, I really kind of even started my first day on the job, is that we would set the global standard for diversity and inclusion by 2019, basically giving us until the end of that year to establish an inclusive culture and a diverse environment. And then the second thing I did was roll out a set of values, and these values were based on my personal values and based on what I thought really needed to be stressed from just talking to the folks that I had talked to, reading the article I had read, you know, my conversation with Mark was very, very insightful. And so we laid out a set of values, and the values spell crafts. And so our hashtag actually is perfect our crafts. And it stands for character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety. And I'll come back and describe some of those a little bit later. And so I just kind of got in the middle of the floor and told everybody, here's what we're about. These values will not just be on the walls, but they will operate in the halls. I mean, I actually remember saying that every decision we make, all of our actions will be based on a set of values. So laid out a vision, laid out the values, had a 100-day plan, and the 100-day plan was basically in 4 parts. It was to model zero tolerance. So to really, to conduct an investigation, to assist in the external investigation, in terms of being responsive, to set up a hotline, to really put ethics at the center of the organization, to really show that we had zero tolerance for sexual harassment, inappropriate behavior, mistreatment of people, false allegations as well, but that we were about treating people fairly. And there would not be an environment where we had any type of inappropriate behavior going on, that we would take swift action. And so they used to tease me all the time because I'd snap my finger and say swift action. There's just some stuff we're not going to put up with. People are coming to work to enjoy work, to make money for their family, to enhance their lives. They shouldn't have to come into a hostile work environment or an environment where they're just going to be mistreated. So that was very, very important to me. So modeling the zero tolerance, so the swift action and all that. Then we had a Mavs women's playbook, because the place was not friendly to women, and it very much is now. So we put a playbook together of things to really enhance, educate, encourage, and elevate women. So we focus on professional development. We went from having 0 women in permanent leadership positions to right now, my leadership team is almost 50% women and 47% people of color. So we definitely made some progress very quickly in terms of identifying talent that was already there. I brought in some new talent. We brought some people up. So we just had some things to do. We were very intentional about diversifying the group. So a whole kind of Mavs women's playbook. We put together an employee resource group called Women of the Mavs Empowering Network, where we started spending time together, lifting each other up. We even had some men who joined the group. So a very intentional focus on letting the women know that they actually matter. And that was necessary because it was missing. The men knew they mattered and they ran the place. And so we had to kind of bring us all together. And then the third part of the plan was cultural transformation. This was about making inclusion and diversity top notch. It was about putting employee surveys in place, focused on employee engagement. How do you get people to really contribute and feel like they're part of what's going on? So a real focus on inclusion and belonging, and then putting a culture in place, a values-based employment culture. And that's what I called it, values-based employment. And a speak-up culture, one where people could talk to you about anything, where they could participate in a business planning process. And we didn't have a business planning process, so we had to put that in place, which leads to operational effectiveness, just the basic things you need to run a business. So those were the 4 areas: model zero tolerance, Mavs women's playbook, culture transformation, and operational effectiveness. And hold on, I will actually show it to you, because I wrote it actually on an airplane going to Fresno, California. Can you see that? That is literally the 100-day plan on 1 page. I guess it's supposed to be famous now. And so we laid it all out, and I ended up, so once we did all that, we put the 100-day plan on some really big poster boards, and we put them all around the office, because it was about transparency. We had all these things, and of course there's pages and pages and pages of stuff underneath it. But we had it so where every time we would check something off, we would have kind of a big ceremony, and we wanted everybody to participate. We wanted everybody to agree that yes, we've addressed this. In fact, I remember one time I was getting ready to check something off, and I had checked it off, and everybody started looking at me. And so then I asked the team, I pulled them to the side. I said, "What's going on? Why are people looking at me like that?" And then my head of human resources said, "Oh, Cynt, I haven't gotten a chance to communicate all the compensation stuff to people." I mean, they were calling me on it. They were calling me on it because you're checking this off, but we don't know what's going on there yet because you haven't done it. And it's because she hadn't communicated stuff yet. So I got ahead of myself. But we were very transparent about that. So we put all that up on the wall. And then I had one-on-ones with every single person on the team. At the time, it was 140 people. We're up to about 180 now because we were really under-resourced. But at the time, it was 140 people. And I met with all of them one-on-one. And I would start with the same question. How long have you, I said, tell me about your whole life story. Tell me about your story. And then I would end with, so where do you see yourself 5 years from now? So it was a chance for me just to get to know them. 9 out of 10 times, they would answer the first question with, this is my 5th season at the Mavs. This is my 10th season at the Mavs. And then I have to back them up and say, okay, were you born in the building? I want your story. I want your whole life story, not just your Mavs story. I want to get to know you. And it was great because I just really got a chance to understand what made these folks tick. And one of the things that was real clear to me, I brought in my human resources officer, my head of ethics and compliance, who actually came in with me to the Mavs. And I was just crying one night. And I said, you know what? These are some incredible people. These are some wonderful people. They've been under poor leadership. But these people, most of these people, I mean, they intentionally wanted a career in sports, which was very different for me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a long, stellar career in telecommunications, and I chose that. They chose a career in sports. And it just hit me. I said, my job is to make sure these people get to have the careers they signed up to have. And so I just asked my human resources lead and my head of ethics and compliance. I said, are you guys all in? Are you all in? I'm not here just to be here for this piece of it. I am truly excited about leading these people. And I'm going to be here for a while. Are you all in? And we just made a little pact. I said, we're going to make this a great place to work. Like one day I want to see us on Fortune's Great Place to Work list, which is some of the work, I'd done at AT&T. I want this to be a great place to work. But that was the result of the one-on-ones. And so we kind of enhanced our 100-day plan and said, let's get busy. And we got busy. That was it. Leadership matters.
All right. So I want to ask you something that I personally think a lot about and I struggle with. And so I'm asking you for advice here. And I think it touches on a lot of things that you've talked about. Mm-hmm. So, I think if you had asked me 15 years ago, I would have told you my management philosophy was a lot closer to treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think, I felt like, hey, I'm someone that's got the right values. We're always going to do right by people. We're never going to, treat people unfairly. And as I continue to grow teams, I would say my management philosophy gets closer to treat people as they need to be treated.
Right.
And I think that's where workplaces are going overall.
Right.
I think I think I struggle is I also think it's my role as the CEO of these companies to be the arbitrator of high standards and to hold us as a team and to hold individuals accountable. And I'd like to get your take on how you get that right balance, because there's a tension there. There's a tension between team members wanting and expecting more of their companies for it to be not just as it should, a place of belonging, but more benefits, more career growth opportunity, more coaching, more work-life balance, and especially in a company that may not be doing as well as an NBA professional team, that's still on its upward turn or needs to turn around like AT&T did in the past. Mm-hmm. How do you find that right balance between being the arbitrator of standards and high performance with knowing that, I think the way that we need to manage teams today is probably very different than we did 15, 20 years ago?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, it is my job, I think, as the leader, to articulate a set of values, to let people know when you come to work for the Dallas Mavericks, here's what we value, here's what that looks like, here are the questions that we ask around that, and here's your role that you have to play in all of it. So to make it real clear, this is the foundation that we stand on. And once you do that, and once people understand that and they make a decision that they can fit into that, because those are non-negotiable. The people that work at the Dallas Mavericks, you have to have character and integrity. If you're going to work here, you have to respect each other. If you're going to work here, you have to be okay with authenticity and people bringing their authentic selves to work. So, I could go through all of the values. So that's my job, to make sure that we are laying that out, we are practicing that, and we are hiring to that. And if we have to, we're firing to that too. If people violate that in the code of conduct, et cetera. It's also my job to make sure that we have a robust business planning process in place so that we can be successful, and then to bring everybody in on that process. Years ago, I would have said, where the business plan is pulled together on the 37th floor at AT&T, and then the rest of us get it, and then we figure out what's our piece, and if we can execute on it, great, and if they missed it, then they missed it, and we won't make that. That's not the case. That's not how it works. Our business plan is, and I think successful business plans are built with everybody in mind. So we have a process where everybody gets to contribute. Everybody puts their ideas and energy into it, and then we all hold each other accountable for working on the priorities, for delivering the goods, et cetera. And that's what that speak up culture is all about. You have to have a culture where it's okay for people to say, are we off course, or we actually need to change, or this has happened, what are we going to do? And that's at any level in the organization. And so my job is to make sure that that culture actually exists, but not to be the one that's always trying to hold people accountable, which I do hold my leadership team, I hold those guys accountable. But we have to all hold each other accountable. Hopefully the people in my organization will tell you that they hold me accountable for certain things. So we're just all in here together. And I alluded to it earlier. My job is to listen to people and to have everybody engaged in all of our processes and to learn from them, because they bring a certain expertise and that's why you hire people. They bring a certain expertise that you don't have. So you listen to them, you learn from them, you love them. I love them. I love them as people. I love their families, which is why I want to get to know their families. That's why I ask you about your little honeys at 3 months old and 2.5 years old. I think you want to get to know people, because those are the people, that's who they are before they even get there. So my job is to know all of that, so then I can turn them loose and let them do what they need to do inside of that building. So it's not about just you being the only one that's driving everything. You'll kill yourself trying to do that. And I've been there before. I mean, I ended up very, very sick in North Carolina. Yes, some of it, people could point to genetics, but a lot of it is I ran myself crazy. I was stressed and I ran myself into bad health trying to do it that other way. That's not the way to do it.
I had a team member that worked for me a number of years ago, and he was our director of engineering, and he was also a former military service member, and he taught me a lot. And he said, Jason, the team that feels accountable to each other is infinitely more productive than the team that just feels accountable to their boss or manager.
Right.
And that was a big light bulb for me.
Exactly. I mean, I work for a sports team. Okay, so if Luka can score 50 points, but if nobody else around him does anything, or if the coaching is bad, which fortunately it's not, we're in trouble. We win our games because we have a team, because people practice. So you know what you got to do. You've got to get your skills ready. You've got to sharpen up. You've got to be ready to say, put me in, coach. Okay. And so when people walk in our doors, hopefully we've given them the tools. We've given them the opportunity to develop themselves, and they've taken advantage of it, because, you can't force it, and they're ready to get into the game. And so it takes all of us to win. And the fact that I work for a sports team, it makes the analogy very, very easy, because especially on game night, if you walk into our headquarters building the day of a game, oh my goodness, there is energy there. There are people going back and forth to the arena, coming back. They're meeting their customers. Everybody is doing what they have to do, because we have to pull off actually game day. We have to pull off the whole game experience. And so everybody is playing their role and doing what they have to do, just like the guys on the court.
What do you do differently today as a leader than you did even 10 or 15 years ago? What's something that you feel like, maybe even a decade ago in your career that you didn't either know as well or you didn't put in place that you do today as a CEO?
I communicate a lot with our people, and I've always been one to kind of do the whole, management by walking around and all that. But I communicate a lot with our people on substantive matters, not just, how are you doing, that kind of stuff. But I try to spend time to really get in their business from a standpoint of not just being in their business, but so that I can help them. And so there was a point in my career where, and I'll tell you a funny story. There was a point where I used to say I do my people work by day and my paperwork by night. So I'd go out and I'd visit all my team. This is when I was in Oakland, and I had a big assignment, installation, and maintenance district. One of the first women to have that job, huge organization in California. And so I'd go out and I'd visit all these people, and I was just doing all my people work, having my meetings, getting to know people, talking about kind of our strategy and all that, but not going that deep. And then I said, okay, so I do my paperwork at night, meaning just some of just the what I call the mundane kind of things, some of the financials and all of that, because I have this thing where people matter, and that's all that matters. And that's true to a point. But I got to the point where I realized I've got to integrate all of it. So I've got to sit and also talk to people about the financials. I've got to talk to them deep about the results. I've got to engage them in how do we make things better, and not just make sure that I'm communicating the results, but I am allowing them to dig in and tell us how to improve things, tell us why something could be off, tell us how we can make things better. And not just at business planning time, but to keep them engaged the whole time, to make sure we're transparent, that they get scorecards, they get dashboards, they can see what we see. There was a time when I thought I was the only one that needed to see it, or the people at my table were the only ones that needed to see it. No, everybody has a role to play in it. And I have learned some of those lessons the hard way.
Yeah. So
transparency matters. I wasn't always open about, just talking to people and, being a people person, but not always open and transparent. I mean, not that you're hiding anything, but it was just old school where, this is the stuff that I look at night and keep everybody else out of it. And then I figure it all out. No, let everybody else in on it.
Well, I think you've been unbelievably transparent about your own life journey. You did not come from means. You grew up in a pretty tough environment as a kid. And I think you've been public about being in a household with domestic violence. And, later on in your life, the challenges of starting a family and then adopting 4 children. To me, I think, as I got to know your life story, I told you before, like it touched my heart. And I think what's so fascinating is, okay, we can agree that people come into this world hardwired a certain way, right? I've got 2 little kids at home, as you said. And I think one of the things I've learned as a newish parent is like these children come into the world, their own people.
Yes.
Now that said, there was something, not just the way that you came into this world, but through your set of experiences and what you learned that helped you overcome adversity. I think we can agree more than most people in this world ever will, certainly myself included. And I think what I'm trying to understand is if you had to try to help somebody or coach somebody in their life overcome really adverse circumstances, what's the playbook you're going to give them? And maybe they're not someone that was as naturally inclined to do that as you were, but I think we both want to believe that no matter what somebody's starting point is, that they can get to where they want to be in life.
Right. Well, I know for me, it starts with having a mom that I listened to, a mom who told me it's not where you live, it's how you live. And then she also added, and with God, all things are possible. So it started with her putting 2 books in my hand, and I still tease her about this. She put a math book in one hand and a Bible in the other, told me to keep my head in those and to stay focused. So even with things that were going on in our house and things that were going on in our public housing project, which I actually didn't realize it was even the projects until some little fella in college brought me home one day and got all weird about me living in the project. So, because I was just taught that this is just where you live. Yes, we don't have a whole lot. And yes, we had violence going on. And yes, I saw some crazy things growing up. And my mom kept us very focused and on education. And fortunately for me, I had teachers and educators who embraced me and made sure that I got a good shot at life. So I always had an optimistic attitude. I always had a great perspective about life. My mom said when my father told us that, we were going to be hookers on the street, and my youngest sister was all upset about it. My mom said at 15 years old, and we don't know where it came from. I just said, that's not going to happen. I mean, we're going to be one of the first in our families to graduate from a big college, and I would always say big. And I said, I'm going to be the president of something one day, and we're going to help mom get out of the projects. And my mom was working 3 or 4 jobs, so she could do it herself. But I just wanted to be a part of it. But always focused on education and focused on a brighter day. And when I think about the things that have happened in my life, I mean, even having 4 second trimester miscarriages and a daughter who died at 6 months old, and the time we spent at Children's Hospital, Oakland, dealing with all that. When I think about my husband having brain damage and they said he'd never walk and talk again, which I tease him now because the doctor said he's about 85, 90% back to normal. And I always joke and say that's less brain damage than he had when I married him. So it's okay. So when I think about all that though, you know what happens? Every time I was down, I got up. Even when my daughter passed away and my husband left for the weekend to go see his parents and I didn't want to go, I just wanted to be at home by myself. That was on a Friday. He left. He came back home on a Sunday and I was still laying on the steps, just crying. I just needed to get it out. And when I think about that, the beautiful thing about that whole weekend is by Sunday evening, I got back up. And so every time something would happen, I'd get back up. There would be somebody there to pick me up, some force to pick me up, some hand that would grab me back up and help me stay focused on what my overall purpose in life is, and that's to make this world better. And so even when I had cancer, you know, I am a cancer survivor. I had stage 3 colon cancer. I was diagnosed in December 2010, 1 lymph node away from stage 4. And so I remember getting those words saying you had cancer. It was like an out-of-body experience. I mean, even when I think about it now, I just can't believe I was told that. And you know what? You're down there for a while, but then you got to get up. And I treated that like it was a project at work. Let me lay out my plan. I'm uniquely qualified for this. I'm equipped, etc. Because I just believe that bad things really do happen to good people. You have to accept adversity and never, ever, ever give up. So that's just what I believe. And I have believed it, according to my mom, since I was a kid. The things happen for a reason, and you have to get back up. You have to get back up. So I've learned some life lessons along the way, and I have a few of them. I'll tell you just a few of them. You want to hear them?
I would love to. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a few life lessons. The first one is always remember where you came from, because you might forget where you're going. I've never been embarrassed. Now, I haven't always talked about it. I mean, I was probably 47 years old before I just started really openly telling my story, just to realize that now it's inspirational to people. I wasn't embarrassed by it. I've never been embarrassed about growing up in a public housing project. I've never been embarrassed about being poor, any of that, because I just got some great breaks in life. But I never talked about it until now. So, I mean, until I was 47. So always remember where you come from. You might forget where you're going. It really is the compass of the journey. Number 2, I have learned, especially in my professional career, is the value of doing the right thing. And so when I give my commencement addresses, I try to tell these young people, there is a difference between doing things right and doing the right thing. We are so focused when we're in school and we're trying to do what our parents want us to do, to doing it right. I mean, we got to get it right because we got to get that A on that test. And I was one of those straight A kids, and I had to get the A on the test. But there will be a time in your life, especially in your career, where you have to do the right thing. You have to do the right thing as it relates to your integrity at work and at home. So I know the difference in that now. I would never thought there would be a point in my life where someone actually might ask me to do the wrong thing. Even then, if they won't say, do the wrong thing. But you look at what they're asking you to do and you just know it's not right. No. And that's why character is at the very top of the list. And do not let me forget to tell you a character story, okay? And so then I've learned the value of showing up. You have to be present to win. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to be in certain places. With my background, there were times when sometimes I just thought I didn't fit, that I shouldn't be there. It's like there's a book, The Empress Has No Clothes. I just thought, okay, they're gonna find me out. I shouldn't really be here. Well, no, you should be there. And so you need to show up and be a part of whatever's going on. I've already told you sometimes the light at the end of the tunnel isn't
Can I dive into that for a moment? I mean, obviously, I mean, you spent 36 years at AT&T. I'm sure a lot of times you were the only woman or the only person of color, or the only person of color who was a woman in a room or a leadership position. What was that like for you? You know, and how has it changed? How different does it feel today than it did 30 years ago?
Okay, so I was asked that question on the Today Show a couple years ago. And so the response I gave to Craig Melvin is, first of all, I was surprised when they said I was the first Black female CEO of an NBA team. I actually didn't believe that. I mean, then it was 2018. Are you kidding me? So then I found out that is true. I said, okay, so then I need to make sure I am not the last. And I need to make sure that I am cultivating and nurturing and mentoring and sponsoring the second, third, fourth, and fifth. So there's an enormous responsibility that goes with being the first, one that I graciously accept because I can't be the only one. I have to make sure that at some point I'm not the first and I'm not the only, and I'm working on it.
That's a pretty big deal. I don't want to skip over that because I can't say I've had to live through that. Like you've been in these situations where it's not just about the work you do and what people think of Cynt. It's that, people are going to maybe judge an entire gender or an entire ethnic background, based upon the position you're in.
Okay.
Without getting silly about it, I mean, what does that feel like when you're in that position?
Yeah, I'm going to give you an example that actually kind of upset me one night. Okay, so I try to, I'm not a big social media person. I mean, I'll do some tweets and all that around the team, and then if I think I really have something to say. But I have 4 kids, so I'm one of these mommy stalkers. When they get to be teenagers, like you got to get out there and between midnight and 1 a.m, that was my time. I'd stalk them. Okay, like I'm out there. So a couple years ago, when I first got this job, there are these people out there saying, "Oh, so Mark Cuban did the politically correct thing. He got a Black woman. We're sure she's not qualified," all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay. This is crazy. What? I'm not qualified because I'm a Black woman? Just because they've never had a Black woman in this job? That's crazy. And then I had some of that internally, where I had one guy, tell his whole team to ignore me because I was not going to last 90 days because women can't do these jobs. I mean, well, obviously he's not here anymore, but I mean, that's ridiculous. So that kind of stuff just drives me crazy. And so it just gives me a little more motivation to make sure that I show people that, yes, women can do these jobs. Yes, Black women can do these jobs. Yes, we're smart, all that kind of stuff. So you have to deal with people's stereotypes, and I recognize that they exist. There was a point in time where people would tell me you have to work twice as hard as anybody else, and I'd get in there and work 4 times as hard as anybody else because I had something to prove. That I'm not trying to do anymore. I mean, I do believe you have to deliver the goods, you have to work hard, but I think we all have to do that. And yes, stereotypes still exist, but I can't kill myself trying to respond to somebody else's stereotype. But it's real, and it happens. And, sometimes you just take advantage of it. It's okay. It's okay. It's the world we live in, that we are still in a place where there are some genders and races that have not broken into certain areas. And so we celebrate when it happens. And then hopefully we'll be at a point at some time where we don't have to celebrate it because it's no big deal because it's common. But until we get there, we'll just keep celebrating it.
Yeah, I'd love to stay on that for just a second longer. I mean, obviously we're living.
Well, Jason, this is your show. You can stay on whatever you want to for as long as you want to.
Today it's your show. Obviously, we're living through a really important time with, the heightened importance of Black Lives Matter. I think one of the things I'd like to get your perspective on is there are a lot of people, I think, out there who aren't Black that feel like they want to be an ally to the community, that they do the right things. But the truth of the matter is, like, if you look at me personally, I haven't had to live day in and day out the importance of Black Lives Matter. And over the last 3 months, a lot of what I've been thinking is like, okay, what more should I be doing for that community, for other communities? What perspective and advice do you have for folks that, see themselves as part of the solution, but maybe aren't day-to-day living that activism, or day-to-day had been that kind of ally? What are the things you'd say, hey, this is how you can get involved and be part of making this a better, inclusive environment for everybody?
Mm-hmm. We had something a few weeks ago at the Mavs, and we sponsored it. It was a community conversation. It was called Courageous Conversations. And our theme was listen, learn, unite. And so that's where we wanted people to start. It was a very diverse group of people. And we had a few panel discussions. We had one conversation where it was primarily Black men telling their stories. So our staff members, our coaches, et cetera, our players telling their stories as being Black men in America. We wanted people to hear their reactions to the George Floyd killing and what's happening in our country. And so it was an eye-opener for people. And we had a lot of internal conversations too, where our white employees just said, we want to learn more. And it was insightful for them. And we created a safe space where people could ask questions and have these conversations. Then we ended up having a second conversation around stereotypes and around privilege and around your stories and understanding other people's stories. So that was very insightful. But the last one, which was my favorite, we had people who they actually lead 6 different systems. They're the leaders of it in the area. So we had the chief of police to talk about what's happening in the criminal justice system, someone who heads a child welfare nonprofit, a Dallas CASA, court-appointed special advocates. We had our superintendent of schools, so the person who leads the Dallas Independent School District. So we took 6 different systems because I truly believe that the issues that we're dealing with are systemic. And so we had them talk about the state of Black America, where are we right now, and then where do we go from here? And that was the name of the panel. And so what people told us afterwards is it was very educational because they want to be a part of the solution, but they don't know exactly where they can play. And so we wanted to lay it all out. And then we said, let's develop a community action plan, which we've done. It's called Mavs Take Action. And the different companies, different community organizations, different entities in the area, let's figure out where we can all play to make a difference. I believe this in the depths of my soul, that each organization, each individual has a role to play in all of this. And you got to play to your strengths. You got to play to your passions. You've got to be educated and learn what the real issues are. And once you know what the real issues are, then you can get in there and bring your time, talent, or treasure in some area. You're doing it right now by us having this conversation. So we put Mavs Take Action in place, and it's around advocacy, communication, training, investment, outreach, and noise. And the investment is around community investment, employment, and economic investment. People need jobs. It's about community investment, helping different community organizations, helping Black-owned and minority-owned businesses, supplier diversity. I mean, it's just a range of things. It's 25 initiatives, and we're asking people, look at those 25 initiatives and tell us where you want to play. And so you know your strengths, Jason. You know what you can bring to the party. You've got to understand what is really going on in the party. So you take time, you read books, you watch movies, you talk to people, you have conversations. Our next door neighbors asked us, younger white couple, asked us if we could come over one night to just talk to them. They just wanted to ask questions about our experience as being Black people in America. And we said, okay. And so my husband was kind of rolling his eyes. We had the best 3-hour conversation on their porch. They had so many questions. And so now she's taking that back to her workplace. They're putting a plan together. Some stuff is just being educated. Some stuff people really don't know, and some stuff they do know. I mean, I believe in unconscious biases, but I also believe in conscious biases. There are some stuff you do know, and you need to check it. And so you know yourself better than anybody else.
Yeah. I'd be really, I'm sure at AT&T, a lot of what you did was the work around that. I want to know from your perspective, how does a organization or how do you think people should be addressing unconscious bias? I think it's something easy for people to overlook. If they say, well, I don't know I'm biased, like, is that a problem? How do you think about the work that people do to address unconscious bias, and how do you roll it out organizationally so that, you see it make a difference in companies?
That was the beautiful thing. Now, for the Mavs, and we did it at AT&T as well, we would actually have sessions on it. We'd have people, outsiders come in and insiders come in, and they would talk about unconscious biases. They'd give examples. We would talk about our own unconscious biases. I know at the Mavs, we've had sessions where we actually stopped to identify what we thought were some of our biases, and then we'd listen to other people, because then we're like, okay, well, do I have that bias? Okay. I mean, we actually try to help people uncover their unconscious biases by having others talk about their conscious biases, because you can't talk a whole lot about your unconscious biases. You don't know you have them. But if you're in those discussions, and that's what that whole second conversation was about at our Courageous Conversation Day, to talk about stereotypes. And basically the question we ask is, what stereotype does somebody have about you that you don't like, and why? And so it was a group of 10 people in 20 different groups having these conversations, and led to some aha moments for some people realizing, yes, they do have those stereotypes. Ooh, they do have that bias. Okay, well then let's talk about that. But you got to create a safe space to do that. And then you have to have a space where, and we do a lot of work around exclusive behaviors and inclusive behaviors. What are the behaviors that actually exclude people? For example, when women start talking in meetings, but all of a sudden you cut them off, and then when Jason says it, then it's okay and all that. Okay, so how do we turn that into an inclusive behavior? How do we check people and that kind of stuff? So we talk a lot about those kinds of things. It's about keeping it front and center, but also having some strategies where you can say, okay, let's call that out. Let's put that in front of people. And so we do a lot of that. I'm big on saying, okay, excuse me, I think Erin just said that. In fact, I think she said it about 3 times. Let Erin talk, and let's run with that. You can't let people get away with disrespectful kind of behavior, and that's one of our values, respect. But it's really putting it out there front and center. And then the conscious biases are another thing, because when people know they have biases and then they won't check them, then we have to check them. We have to check them. Other people have to do that. You have to think about the environment. What environment are you asking people to work in, live in, and play in? And so you have to decide, what kind of environment do you want to work in, live in, play in? How do you want your kids to grow up? My advice, even to parents, talk to your kids about race at an early age. Teach them about the history of race in this country. Expose them to diverse circles. Put them in places where people don't necessarily look like them. We have to do that at an early age. Racism, all the stuff that's going on, is taught, and the systemic racism is in the system. So look at your practices, look at your policies, look at your pay treatment, look at how you hire people, look at where you recruit, look at who you're trying to bring in as your customers. We make conscious decisions every day to either include people or exclude people.
So I'm glad you
get kind of passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, well, it's important, and I don't know anyone better to hear about that passion from you on the topic right now. I'm glad you talked about, touched on family, and we veered off the conversation of life lessons, which I want to get back to.
Okay.
Part of your leadership and management is not just in business, but with these 4 kids. And I think, you mentioned that they're adopted. You and I were talking about how I think you've got experience with bringing people in your family out of the foster care system. Honestly, I think probably the biggest, it's called a mitzvah in the Jewish culture, that you can do, the most you can ever give back, is to adopt a child and take them into your family. It's the most godly thing I think anyone could do in their life. What's the experience been like for you, and how do you think about parenting Black children today, and just kind of what are some of the different, life experiences that you and your husband went through, bringing children into your family the way that you did?
Yes, it's, it took us about 10 years after, the 4 second trimester miscarriages, and my husband being asked crazy questions by the doctor saying, do you want us to save her or save the kid? He told me that one time. I said, you got to be kidding me. Like, what if we had an argument or something on the way to the hospital? He goes, no, they asked those kind of questions. He said, so at some point we just need to decide, is our family going to be made another way? So after we had the 5th pregnancy, and then my daughter died at 6.5 months old, we said, okay, obviously there's another way that this is going to happen. And so through a series of circumstances, we ended up in a meeting one night where the social workers, Jason, you won't believe this, the social workers had actually made a decision to put this little 2.5-year-old boy in a group home. And it was the right decision at the time, because they didn't have any prospective parents. Nobody wanted a 2.5-year-old Black boy. And we just so happened to show up to a meeting that night, the same night they had put his file on the judge's desk saying, put him into a group home. The judge was going to see that the next morning, but we showed up to a meeting that night. And so we ended up saying we were interested in a 2-year-old Black boy, and they couldn't believe it. It was a miracle. And it was because obviously we had just lost an infant girl. And so we didn't want to replace her. And then honestly, I thought if I could get him old enough to actually put him in daycare and could keep doing my executive woman thing, I would. And so we ended up adopting little Anthony. He had been abandoned when he was 9 months old with his 9-year-old brother taking care of him. He was suffering from failure to thrive, all kind of abandonment, neglect, abuse issues. But he ended up in our home very quickly, and it just totally changed our lives. We ended up finding his brother, who was 9 years old, who was taking care of him when he was 9 months old. So we ended up finding his brother later because their birth mom passed away. So then Ricky was 14 at the time that we met him. And then after that, my son was watching TV with my husband and saw a little girl on TV and decided on the news. She was a Wednesday child in San Francisco on the news and decided that she needed a big brother. He didn't say anything about a mother or father, but she needed a big brother. And so I came in late from work one night, and this is what I used to tell my buddies: be careful about working late at night, because most people are shopping for kids on the TV. I had fellas at home shopping for kids on the TV. And I came in, and that little boy started telling me about the little girl on TV, and he was praying for her, and we had to pray for her every night because she needed a big brother, and she looked sad, and Dad said she looked like me and all this stuff. And I just couldn't believe it. I thought they had both gone crazy. So she's now my 25-year-old. So we ended up adopting her, and 10 years later, same thing happened again. And so we adopted my youngest, who's now 22. So when we moved our son to college, that was a big joke in our house. I said, give me the remote control because I can't have you out here in college trying to pick kids off TV. So we ended up with these 4 kids who really had learning disabilities. They had the normal issues that you hear about when kids are born drug exposed. But I also believe that was the Lord's way of kind of letting me know everybody's not going to be a straight A student like I was going to be. So it really challenged me as a mother to figure out how to respond to these disabilities, how to respond to these kids that have needs. In fact, one of my favorite listening stories is one night I told my husband to put, he saw my son was like 5 years old. He saw his light on and he said, what's going on? I said, all week he's been saying the monsters are coming to get him all week. And so I've just been keeping the light on, but I can't be in there like all night long with him talking about the monsters coming to get him. So my husband said, I'm going to go check on him. So my husband came out like 2 hours later. He was crying. And I said, what's wrong? What's going on? He said, what has he been telling you all week? And I said, he's been saying the monsters are coming to get him. He said, did he actually use the word monsters? I said, well, actually, he's been saying they're coming to get him. They're coming to get him. He said, okay, well, he wasn't talking about the monsters. He was talking about the white cars. He has a lot of anxiety because he thinks the social workers are coming back to get him. Because he said every time he ends up somewhere, they come back to get him. And so I had to go and get him his new birth certificate. I had to show him the pictures with the judge. I had to convince the little fella that he's in our family and that he's never going to be separated from us. That's what he's been trying to tell you all week. That was my lesson in listening. I heard the boy all week. I wasn't listening.
How would you describe your parenting philosophy today?
My parenting philosophy today is these kids will teach me more than I will teach them. So I really do have to listen to them. I am the queen of the castle. Hold on. They actually gave me this tiara. You see that? I actually wear that on Mother's Day with my bell that I ring for 24 hours. And actually, my work team gave me the queen of the castle, and then they gave me one as well, so the tiara. But so I am the queen of the castle. So, my husband and I, we do run this. My husband said is one king, one queen, and, 4 loyal subjects. So we are, we lead the household, but we listen to them. And so I treat them all as individuals. I try to spend enough time with them to where I really understand who they are when they were growing up, who they are as little people. So even when I did all my traveling and I was working a lot, I come in from a business meeting. I don't care if it's midnight. I go straight to all their rooms. I get in the bed with them, even with my shoes on, and I wake them up and I talk to them. And I'd go back to the room with my husband. I'd say, okay, did you know this happened? Did you know that happened? He goes, how do you know that? I'd get right in their faces to truly try to understand what's going on with them. I try to understand what their passions are and how they process things. Like my son, if he's on the piano at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he's been playing the piano since he's 12. that means he broke up with the girlfriend or something. I mean, something's going on. Something's going on. So I'm very much into trying to feel what they feel and not drive my own agenda. They are very creative kids. I actually started off as an engineering major. I mean, so I'm like science, technology, engineering, math. They're very much arts. And so I had to pick up some things and I had to learn some things just to mother them and just to be a good parent. But they're at the top of the list. I have a thing that I practice called rubber balls and crystal balls. Rubber balls are the things that bounce back. We have them at work, we have them at home. Some things will bounce back. Second soccer practice, third staff meeting. I mean, some stuff will bounce back, but there are some things that won't bounce back. Those are the crystal balls. You drop them, they shatter, they never come back. And I remember one time I was with AT&T and they had asked me to help them lobby on some big public policy issues. And they wanted me in Washington, D.C. all week. I said, great, I can be there all week except for Wednesday afternoon because that's my son's first high school swim meet. And so I get to Washington, D.C., they give me the schedule, and the most important policymakers that I had to meet with were on Wednesday afternoon. And I said, I can't do this. It's my son's first high school swim meet. And they're like, it's just a swim meet, but it's his first high school swim meet in a new state. I'm going to be there. And so when my boy looked up to do that individual medley race, and he looked up for his daddy because everybody said, Cynt, don't come back home. It's just a swim meet. He saw his mama. My baby won that race. I am sure he won it because his mother was there. That was a crystal ball to me. It's not like it was his second high school swim meet or his third. So we all have decisions to make about what's crystal and what's rubber and to know what it is. And so they know that I'm there. They know I'm not always there for everything. Sometimes I'm running in with my hair on fire. But if it's crystal, if it's important to them and important to me, then I'm going to be there. I'm not a helicopter mom. My kids have been stranded at school. In fact, that's how my husband ended up quitting his job because we both showed up late coming out of San Francisco one night. And the daycare was, I don't know who they were getting ready to call. I don't know if they were calling my mother, the police, somebody. And the kids were just pitiful. And they made a comment. They said, oh, we're going to be abandoned again. I'm like, oh, Lord. So I told my husband, somebody's got to quit. He said, I guess the W-2s speak for themselves. So he ended up quitting his job.
I love that analogy. If you could, so we talked about this a little bit before we jumped into our interview. If you could go back, I'm going to give you a time machine.
Okay.
And you could go back in time to any 2 points of your professional career. Mm-hmm. And you can give yourself any advice that you feel like was the most important thing that you needed to know. You know, what 2 times in your career do you go back to and what advice do you give yourself and why?
Okay, I would go back to, this is really good. I'd go back to a time when, and it was in 1990, when some things had happened at work and I was shooting off all these emails and I was wild, okay? And I had it all crafted out. I was saying all the right stuff. I was laying out the facts on some things that were going on. And this is back to one of those things about doing things right versus doing the right thing. I was so accurate and so right in what I was doing in terms of just laying it out, but it was the wrong thing for me to do. Unfortunately, somebody actually drove all the way from Sacramento, California to Oakland to come and talk to me and tell me to stop and to help me realize that sometime that I have to really choose my battles. And so that's what I finally learned a few years ago, is to really choose my battles, and that I don't have to respond to every single thing. I don't always have to set the record straight. There's a time and a place to do this. There is a graceful response. And the point he made to me when this mentor came to see me, and he said, don't give away your key to the executive washroom. And what he was saying is, you are here in a position, you can help bring other people up, you can take care of all these people, but you actually have to be here in order to do that. And you can respond in a way where you won't be here anymore, because sometimes people just might not like the way you're responding because you're putting stuff in people's face. Yes, it's the truth, but that's just not the way to do it. You're copying their bosses and their bosses' bosses. Let me show you how to do this. And so that's what I would I would have told myself a long time ago, is to respond gracefully when bad things happen, and that you don't have to respond to every single thing. Choose your battles, bring people in to help you figure out how to respond. And so I know that now. So I try to calm down a little bit.
It's a
Okay.
hard lesson to learn. I still struggle with that one all the time. Unfortunately, I've got people in my life that sometimes say, "Whoa, there."
And you need that. And so then that's another thing I would tell myself is, and I have it now, but I didn't have it then, was the personal board of directors, where you have people in your life and they literally have roles that they have to play. So you have somebody who is your mentor that you can talk to about all that, and they help train you and they help get you ready for the game. Then you have your sponsor, people who actually, they're your agents. They actually go and say, okay, I want this person to go here, or put this person in there, or put them on that team. But then you have your pushers, people who are just going to push you hard. They know what your goals are, but they're going to push you past those goals. They're going to push you past your limits. They see things in you that you can't even see, and they're going to push you hard to get there, to the point where sometimes they'll probably make you mad. And then you have your lifters, people who are going to encourage you, because we all need encouragement. Even those of us who are optimistic and all that, you need people who are going to encourage you, lift your spirits. They know when you get down, or even if they don't know, you can call them and they can hear it in your voice. Somebody told me that a few years ago, and I said, wow, I wish I had that kind of personal board of directors in my life a long time ago. And so I ended up creating that for myself. And then once a year, I try to get those 4 people together. And they know that that's specifically the role that they play in my life. Now, some people can play multiple roles, but they know what role they're playing. And I try to get them all together so then they can kind of talk about me and assess me and do all that. It's a way to know that you don't have to have it all on yourself. And for so long, I just felt like I had to do this all myself. And to your point earlier, I was so often the first. I mean, to the point where, you think that's your first name, that I was always the first or the only. And so I would just take all that and I'd figure, okay, some people I can't talk to because they don't really know what I'm going through. They don't know what I'm dealing with. They don't know how it is to be Black. They don't know how it is to be the only woman at the table. But when you have kind of your personal board of directors and the people in your life, you can talk through all of that. I had an ulcer at 26 years old. And I know it was because, I was in my first 5 years with the company, charging hard, also dealing with my personal situations of miscarriages and all that. And I just kept it all in. I truly kept it all in. And so I learned the hard way how stress can just play strange tricks on your body, and things can happen when you keep it all in, and when you're not letting it out and talking to people and allowing other people to be on this journey with you. We are our brother's keepers. We are our sister's keeper. I have something called HASU, HASU, and it's hook a sister up. And so when I talk to my sister friends and I'm doing my women's conferences, I talk about HASU, and that HASU moment where you just need that sister or you just need that brother, and you can just say, this is the HASU moment. I mean, and so it's no questions asked. It's like, okay, I need you. I need you to respond. I need the answer to be yes for whatever reason. And sometimes for me, it's because it's just too much. It is just too much. So we got to be there for each other, and we have to learn how to reach out. I wish I had known that a long time ago. I know it now, but I'm 60. I wish I had known it when I was 40.
Yeah. I love the concept of a personal board of directors. You reminded me of an exercise that I got taken through one time that was really powerful. It's called the blind window.
Mm-hmm.
And you go through it with 2 other people, and you put a chair back to back with the 2 people, and they're going to kind of be like your coaches. And you talk through something in your life that's, pretty poignant, an insecurity, a major worry, something that's really stressful. And then the 2 people talk about your situation in the third person as if you're not there at all, and just give their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredibly enlightening and powerful just to hear other people talk about your situation and their perspective on it, but without even addressing you, and just that candidness.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. When I have my annual meetings with my board of directors, and they're all just sitting there talking about me and going back and forth, it's a surreal experience. Like, okay, well, did I really do that? Or is that really going on? I mean, it's just interesting to hear other people talk about you. And it's enlightening. It's enlightening because sometimes you have to do, like, did I really hear that? You have to do a little double take.
Yeah. I'm curious to get your take on how you brought up something earlier that I think it's so important. I think one of the things that I try to, one of the things that I try to do at Comparably is, we are a company that provides the data of what other company cultures are like.
Mm-hmm.
And so that inherently means, like, excuse my language, we better have our shit together.
You better
Right?
have it together. That's
if
right.
we're
You better have it together.
if we're the company that's supposed to help set the standards for how other companies, are, like, we can't live in a glass house, and
Mm-hmm.
we're certainly not a perfect company. I'm not a perfect leader, but I really, it's really important to me to that people know that they are not only asked, but really expected to give their point of view on what needs to get better,
Mm-hmm.
on how we can improve as a team, how we can improve as a leader. We solicit that feedback a lot. We try to have really candid conversations. I think one of the things I lament a little bit that's happening professionally and just overall in our society is I feel like we have less tough, candid conversations. And I think people get worried to speak up. I think they get worried to share their mind. I think we've lost a little bit of the grace and art of how to disagree without being so disagreeable and angry with each other, and how to take in feedback without getting so defensive. What are some of the specific practical things that you implement, today at the Mavs and that you did at AT&T to create that candid culture both ways, or whether it's a manager to the employee, a peer to peer, people of different opinions? Like, what are the tactical things that folks can, use your experience to put into their organizations?
Okay, I think there are a few things. Number one, I think you have to, people have to know the communication is very, very important. So you have to role model it. So we have one-on-ones. I have one-on-ones with my direct reports. We have skip level one-on-ones. They have one-on-ones with their team. And it's not just for the sake of just checking off the work items. It's to really have those candid conversations and talk about what is really going on. So that's one thing. You have to role model that at every single level. People have to know that these conversations are encouraged. We also do surveys. We have culture surveys. We have employee engagement surveys. We have pulse surveys. So people see that we want to get that feedback, and we have an anonymous way to do it as well. And then we also have an employee hotline. So we have set up different ways. The NBA has a hotline too, but at the Mavs, when I got there, we put our own hotline in place where people can call, and not just to file a complaint, they can call about anything, okay? And so we have put actual vehicles in place where people can talk to us. The key though is, and sometimes when people stop talking, and I found this out too in a job that I had at AT&T when we were trying to get on the company had been trying to get on the Great Place to Work list for about 6 years. And so they gave me that task and basically just said, well, is this even real? And if it's not, we're not going to apply anymore. And so then when I went to meet with Michael Bush, the CEO of Great Place to Work, and I was being the bad cop, and I said, well, I don't know if this is real because we keep applying. I know this is a great place to work, et cetera, et cetera. And so he started showing me all the data and what people have said. He said, and so maybe you need to check to see if your company is actually responding to what people are actually telling them. And so when I came back, we pulled all the data for 6 years. I brought in kind of the top 25 VPs in the company, met with the top leadership team, which I was a part of, the officer team, and said, this is what folks have been telling us. Are we responding to it as a business? Not one off, not one person, not Cynt responding to her employee engagement results, not this. Are we doing this as a business? And the answer was no. And we really started to focus on it. And of course, before I left, we made Fortune's 100 Best Place to Work list for the first time. It really came back to us taking that feedback that our people had been giving us, sharing it with everybody, being very transparent about here's what you've been saying, and now here's what we're going to do about it. And it's like, that 100-day checklist. Here's what you guys, here's what's in place, here's how we've enhanced it, here's what you've told us, and now let's talk about whether or not we've done it. So to be very open about that. So there are just some concrete things that you can do. There's a tool, a platform that I just heard about a few weeks ago that we're actually going to use. And so I can follow up and let you know how it works. And it's called Canaries. I don't know if you've heard of that. And it's a platform that's very transparent, gives the employees an opportunity to anonymously provide a lot of information, and then you can give it back to them in a very transparent way. We're going to try that because we're always looking at ways. And this is another thing. You can never rest. You can just never think that your environment is perfect. Our employees, I believe our employees will tell you. They can talk to us about anything. We have candid conversations. In fact, let me give you one good example. So we've been in this, work from home mode for the past 4.5 months, okay? So we've gone from having monthly huddles with Cynt to weekly huddles. And we're taking a little break in the summer, so it's every other week right now. Well, then that wasn't enough. Then our inclusion and diversity lead came and said, Cynt, they want to have coffee with Cynt. So can you do a coffee with Cynt? And so the women had coffee with Cynt, and the men said, we want coffee with Cynt. Oh my goodness. So much stuff came out on these calls. And so then I asked the men a question. I said,
what was some of the stuff that came out that surprised you?
Okay, so I asked the men a question because we have 4 employee resource groups. Okay, so 4 employee resource groups. And so it's parents at work, kind of the younger tenured employees, so less than 30 years old, less than 5 years with the company, the women's employee resource group, and then the Black employee network. And so I asked on the call with the men, I said, if you are a 40-year-old white man with no kids, what's the ERG for you? And do you think we need one? Because I actually think we need to start to expand. When I was at AT&T, we had 8, then we went to 10. So I just think we need to expand. And it was very eye-opening because on the call, they said, nope, actually, some of us are part of the women ERG. Some of us are part of the parents at work. So we talked a lot about allies and being allies and how they love being allies. And some of them love their role as allies. So that was kind of surprising because I thought they were going to say, well, yes, so now we need to add this ERG, now we need that. But it was interesting. I got 3 text messages after that call. And in fact, time-wise, one actually came during the call saying, can I call you later? Because they actually wanted to express a concern. I said, and somebody made a comment that said, no, we are focused on inclusion. We've been focused on inclusion. We feel included and all that. But then these fellas, these 3 in particular, wanted to tell me that sometimes they don't feel included and why. And I ended up having 3 one-on-ones. Each one of them lasted about an hour and a half, just talking about their experience. And it's something that I'm always mindful of because when you have a big focus on inclusion, you have a focus on women, rightfully so, because of what happened and how I got there and what we need to do. You always have to take the temperature. So I was just thrilled that all the guys wanted to have this conversation with me. And so to have those 3 come later and talk to me, I said, okay, so now talk to our team. We have to be very mindful. But I asked all 3 of them, why didn't you bring that up on the call? And they really couldn't answer. I said, I want you to think about why you couldn't bring it up on the call. Now, I actually think because there was just overwhelming, I'm a part of this, I'm a part of that. And some people had just said, I'm involved in this, I'm involved in that. And these 3 in particular weren't that involved. And so they wanted to know how they could get more involved and all that. But the fact they sent me the text message was great. But then the fact that they didn't bring it up on the call also caught my attention. And so I'm always trying to be in touch with that to make sure that people are feeling included, especially in this kind of environment where we're not all touching each other all the time and we don't always see each other. We have to make sure, and especially right now, we're having all these conversations about race. When I sent out a letter to my team. I sent out a few of them, and then I did some external stuff as well. One of the things I asked our team to be mindful of, yes, we're going to learn a lot of things. We're going to have candid conversations. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And I expressed a lot of my feelings because, I have 4 kids, 2 of them African-American young men who get racially profiled, stopped. We just had an incident over the weekend. So it's all very real to me. My sons are George Floyd. My husband is George Floyd. My nephews. So I was like worked up about the whole thing, and I still get worked up about it. But what I told my team also is, but I want us to be mindful of the white people who work here too. The people who are having all kinds of feelings about what's going on. The people who are sending me messages saying, oh my goodness, like, what should I do? I mean, I almost feel guilty being a white person. Well, you shouldn't feel guilty being a white person, just like I don't feel guilty being a black person. So let's be mindful of what everybody is going through and allow these candid conversations for everybody, which is what we're doing. I mean, we're having all kinds of conversations, and so far, so good. So far, so good.
I want to make sure before we wrap up, we just got a couple more minutes. I was loving listening to your life lessons, and then I took us on a tangent. I want to make sure that, we all don't miss some more of those key gems there.
Okay, so let's see, where did I stop? Always remember where you came from, do the right thing, show up. Sometimes the light thing that someone's trained, respond gracefully when bad stuff happens. People matter, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Yes, you can get focused on your results and all that, but people truly do matter. My favorite quote is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It is okay, especially as leaders, especially as business owners and all that, to care about your people. It's not a sign of weakness to truly love these people. That's the only way I can lead people every day. I truly love these people. About their families, I mean, all of that. Number 7, and I talked about it, is to embrace your brothers and sisters. At the end of the day, we are all that we have, and figure out what that actual embrace looks like these days. Protect what's important to you. So often in my life, others have come to me saying they thought I should do this, they thought I should do that. Why did I let this go? Why didn't I take that? I turned down like 4 promotions in my career. Why didn't I do that? Because I had to protect what's important to me. And so in order for you to protect what's important to you, you have to know what's important to you. Integrity is important to me. I have my own set of values. Fun is important to me. My health now is important to me. Believe it or not, there was a point in my life where I wasn't focused on what I call my PMS, my physical, mental, and spiritual health. Spiritual, I've always kind of been focused on that. Mental, not so much physical, of course, until I end up with cancer. So protect what's important to you, and what's important to somebody else may not be important to you. I have certain things that are just absolutely non-starters for me. My prayer time. I mean, there are just some things that I need to have in my life. So you have to identify what those are, or else you'll go crazy. And so I learned that a lot. I learned that the hard way. And then get mad. MAD, make a difference. Find something that is bigger than you and not about you. I have learned that truly is what will help get me going every day. What is it that is just outside of myself? And there's some stuff going on right now in this world that will just make you mad. Find what your role is and what your role is in it and how you can make a difference. And then the last one is find your passion and your purpose. Cry and get busy. It's okay to cry. Yes, I'm not getting another ulcer. I'm not keeping things in. I don't plan on getting sick again because I don't know how to let things out. It's okay to be emotional. And especially as women, we think we can't cry, we can't be emotional, we got to be like this at work. No, it is okay to be emotional and to cry about some of the stuff that's going on. Find your passion, your purpose, cry about this stuff, and then get busy making a difference. So those are the lessons that I have learned.
Cynt, I've had a very fortunate experience to get to meet a lot of amazing folks in my career. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure I met anybody as inspirational as you. Spending the last hour and a half with you is like injecting an IV of inspiration right in my body. There's all these things I want to go out there and do and get going on. And so
Aaron's going to be mad at me. I didn't tell you my character story. Oh my God.
Let's get it in. Let's tell the character.
Okay, so I got to tell you my character story. Okay, so that's why character is one of our values. It's one of my values, one of Matt's values. Okay, so I tell you about my son, who we adopted. So we adopted him at 2.5 years old. At this point, he's 3.5 years old, and there's a baby picture contest at his school. Of course, we don't have any baby pictures. All we had was actually a very sad, puffy looking picture. You could tell he was sick right before we adopted him. Okay, so he's about 2 years old, but we don't have any baby pictures. So I come in one day and my husband is practicing the speech with him, and they have a picture of a baby. And so my son is giving this whole little speech about his baby picture, where he was born, all this stuff, but it is not true. And so I told my husband, I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "That is not his picture and that is not his story." And he said, "Wife, go away, go away, go away. I'm not going to have, my job as his dad is to give him self-esteem, and I am not going to have him being the only one at school that doesn't have a baby picture. And, back then there was like the stigma that fortunately we don't have anymore about kids being adopted. He said, no, he is not going to experience that. I'm not going to have him embarrassed. So they had basically taken a picture of my husband's nephew, not even the same complexion. So I don't even know how they thought they were going to pull this off. So my son is dark skinned, my little cousin, my little nephew's light skinned. So, but anyway, my husband decided they were going to do this. So we kind of, and you'll learn this with the kids. You don't want to argue in front of the kids. So I kind of like, I'm rolling my eyes. I'm giving them some of that neck action. Like, you cannot do this. Bottom line is, I go off to work the next morning. The boy goes off to daycare to tell this story. I come in that evening. The trophy from the baby picture contest is on my kitchen table, and it is as big as my son. Well, I can't believe this. I look at my husband. He is cheesing. I mean, he is so happy. And then my son's happy. He said, see, I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. Look how happy he is. That's my job. This boy has been through a lot. My job as his dad is to give him confidence, self-esteem. Look at that smile. And I just can't even believe the whole thing. And so I look at him and he says, Mom, see the trophy? I said, yes, baby, I see the trophy. And he says, you want me to tell you what happened? And I said, sure, tell me what happened. He said, I got up there and I held up the picture, and my son's name is Anthony, Kenneth Anthony. He said, I held up the picture and I said, hi, everybody. This is my cousin, Jalen. He said, I don't have any baby pictures because I was born in the bathtub when I was 9 months old with my 9-year-old brother taking care of me, and we were eating out of the garbage cans. And so he's telling this whole story that he has heard before. He knows the story. He said, and then I ended up getting adopted. I have all these cousins and stuff now. He said, Mommy, everybody just started crying and they gave me the trophy. Okay, so here's the moral to that story. At 3.5 years old, with his parents' permission to lie, and I say parents because I didn't completely shut it down before I left the house, okay? With his parents' permission to lie, he went into that daycare, held up that picture, and told the truth. He had a whole story planned and everything that his dad helped him cultivate. He told the truth. And you know why he told the truth? Because character, integrity, honesty is in us at 3.5 years old. And what we have to do is figure out how to continue to be 3.5 years old and operate with that kind of character, honesty, and integrity, even when the powerful people in your life, the people who are feeding you and taking care of you, say it's okay to lie. Even when your dad is encouraging you to do the wrong thing. He went in there to do the right thing because that's all he knew to do. And I contend that that's all we really do know how to do, is the right thing. We just have to do it. And sometimes it takes courage, but we have to do it. So that's my story. He taught me a lot at 3.5 years old.
It's amazing. It sounds like we got to get Anthony on as our next guest.
He's awesome. He's awesome. You'll run into him out there doing something in Marina Del Rey.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, I learned so much this last hour and a half. I know there are going to be so many people appreciative. I'm remiss now that I may have to root against you when Luka maybe goes up against LeBron here, but you got one of the brightest talents, and I'd say even brighter than Luka and Porzingis and Cuban. I think when people get to know you, Cynt, and your story and what you're bringing to the Mavs, I would say that you're the real MVP of that team there in my book.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. I love our team. I love our guys. I love my boss. And I'm glad he asked me to do this job. Thank you. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. I got to come to LA to see you when we get through all of this other stuff.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. And to everyone out there, please stay safe and join us for future sessions. And I think we all had such a special treat today that we were joined by Cynt. And you talked a lot about making company cultures better and more belonging and more inclusive. We're trying to do our part of that on Comparably. And so please do go share your own anonymous feedback about your organizations, and so we can keep understanding what it takes to build a great company culture and learn not only from amazing leaders like Cynt, but from each other. And thank you again for your time and your generosity of spirit, your inspiration, and just being you. I think the world's a lot better place for the fact that more people know you, and I'm glad I can count myself on that list.
Thank you, Jason.
Bye, everybody.